Hey there everyone, this is Bob Martin, the RC sub guy with the NautilusDryDocks.com, and if you follow my channel you'll have seen the 3D file overview for the HL Hunley that I did up a short time ago. This particular video is going to focus on the aspects of converting that particular boat to RC operation, or at least how I accomplished that. We're going to go into how I set up the watertight cylinder, the radio that I use, how I installed the linkages and the drivetrain, and then at the end there we're going to throw some video in of the boat operating in my pool. I won't spoil the surprise, but it works really good. So let's take a look. Heart and soul of the Hunley is the 2.5-inch MSD subdriver unit. Now this is a sort of a Mark II version. We're going to be rolling out a new subdriver here very shortly, but the core aspects of it are going to be very similar. The footprint is going to be very similar, so don't get too caught up in the details. In general, we have a forward battery compartment here, and that's housing a 1,500 milliamp hour lithium polymer battery. There is a waterproof switch on the front, and that controls main power. Now, the good thing about actually using a physical toggle switch is it is a physical break in the circuit. If you're using a remote on-off switch, that does draw a little bit of current, and you can run down your battery. So this just means you pop the hull open, flip the switch, and everything is on. In the front here is a test hose, and basically this allows you to pressure test the cylinder for leaks. So you remove the cap here, submerge the cylinder, blow into the tube, and look for bubbles. In the middle, we have our main ballast tank. It's about 8 inches in overall length. And this particular unit is also set up with a gas ballast fail-safe unit. So in the case of loss of signal, the ballast can be blown and the unit can be brought up to the surface, even if, for whatever reason, it flooded and is down near the bottom of the pond. In the back is the motor compartment. You got your air pump that draws air through this snorkel tube that connects to the actual snorkel tube of the model. We've got the receiver, 3 servos, one of which isn't actually being used, and we have a brushless motor in the back there. This particular unit has way more power, way more speed than the Hunley needs, and so I've dialed back that motor significantly to about, I think, 25% of its maximum output. And the great thing about modern radios is you can do that all through the transmitter. Makes it very easy. Looking at the actual radio system that I elected to utilize, this is Radiolink AT9S Pro, and you'll notice the stubby antenna, and that tells you this is a 2.4 gigahertz radio. Now, I know a lot of you are saying, oh, 2.4 gigahertz, what happens when the antenna goes under the water? It's not a real submarine that way. I'm here to tell you, I used to be one of those people, but I have seen the light. There is a lot of fun to be had with the 2.4 gigahertz radios, and I'm going to be going into that in upcoming episodes on this channel, so stay tuned for that. But in general, the other snorkel tube on the top of the model houses the 2.4 gigahertz antenna. Now, Hunley in particular was never designed to fully submerge. She kept her snorkels above because that's how they circulated air for the poor crew members who were busily cranking the main shaft to propel the boat. So 2.4 actually works exceptionally well for this, but it's not limited to that, and again, we'll get into that later on. Big fan of this radio. It has massive flexibility and functionality. I'll have a series of videos focusing specifically on this radio, and the best thing is completely ready to go with the receiver, and radio is only 125 bucks, which is incredibly cheap for those of you who know about the old 75 megahertz radios that we've been having to give an arm and a leg for lately. All right, let's take a look at the model itself. So the great thing about this particular model is that it has a very natural hull split. We've got a seam here and in the front here, and it runs along the top of this extension. Now Hunley was actually made from an old boiler, and they simply added an extension in the middle to make it a little taller and easier for the people to get in and out of and move around in. The files allow for the hatches to all work, and all of the rigging is set up so it's part of the upper hull. You don't have to remove the rigging every time you get in and out of the boat. And speaking of which, that is a very simple process. You simply take the upper hull, slide it forward, and lift it off. And now we've got full access to the interior of the boat, and we can see everything that's set up there. Let's start with the upper hull though. I'm going to twist this on its side so you can see what it looks like. This is the placement of the foam that I utilize. So there's a big chunk here and in the bow, and then all of these thin sections are not even adhered in. They're actually just press fit in between the ribs, and that works really, really well. This is that snorkel connection. This is a quick connection, so nice and easy to make up. And then the other hole here is where the 2.4 gigahertz antenna would go up into. Nice and simple, nice and clean. Works really, really well. All right, lower hull. We've got our forward dive planes, and those are huge, and in practical application they actually work really well. So I've got this set up right now where we've got simple brass rods that run all along the interior of the boat. They connect to this linkage arm that links the two of them together, and then magnetically attaches to the cylinder at the aft section, aft bulkhead of the cylinder. The rudder is just a simple L-shaped linkage that runs out the back, and it moves back and forth just like this. The actual Hunley had a very complicated arm that swang out, and it had like a swinging rudder connection in the back there. I elected not to do that for reliability purposes, but you could certainly rig something up for cosmetic purposes if you wanted to. Got a nice big prop in the back that moves this boat along really, really well, actually. It's a 1/8 drive shaft that runs through the inside of the boat to a universal joint. Universal joint goes to a dog bone, a nylon dog bone, and that connects to the back end of the cylinder. So installation of the cylinder is exceptionally easy and quick. No tools required. You simply grab the drive shaft, spin it so that it gets aligned, and the hose, the snorkel hose, has some little notches in the bulkhead that you can just press them into on the sides, and then the cylinder drops down. There's a pin in the bottom of the ballast tank. You give it a little wiggle, and it is now fully seated. You'll notice I didn't even touch these rear linkages, and they're all made up right now. Velcro holds everything down. Everything is locked in place, ready to go. This gets connected to the snorkel intake, and the 2.4 gigahertz antenna runs along the upper hull into this tube and just nestles just under the top there. So that gives you like a 3 or 4 inch window of depth to continue controlling the boat by. So now that we have everything all connected, let's turn the radio on. I'll show you how everything works. All right, we're going to fire up the radio. I'm going to make sure that the throttle is in the neutral position according to this. Put it back to neutral and turn on the cylinder. Little startup sound sequence lets the operator know that the electronic speed controller is active and is picking up the signal. So let's just check some of the functionality out here. We got our rudder. And since you're focused back there, we can play with our throttle. Super smooth. Going up to the front, we've got the forward dive plane linkage. And you can see those big dive planes moving forward and back. They actually do a really good job of controlling the depth of the boat. And if you trim it properly, you actually don't need a lot of pitch control for the boat at all, which is good because you don't have any, so to speak. What I also wanted you to see is the ballast system. So if you push the left stick in towards the middle, the servo opens up the vent valve, all the air comes out, and the model submerges until the water gets just underneath the hatches. So the model at all times is positively buoyant, and that is a massive safety and reliability factor. So if any time you lose signal with the boat, eventually it will float itself back up to the surface again. Moving the controller in the other direction activates the air pump, and I don't even know if you can hear it because it's very quiet. Oh, maybe not so quiet, but that's the air pump, and that's drawing air through this hose and blowing it into the ballast tank, bringing the model back up to full surfaced waterline. Now for the cool part, the fail-safe setup, which is all built in and controlled through the transmitter. So we're going to pretend that we're driving along at a fairly clipper pace and you're not really paying attention, and you drive the boat under the surface of the water, the antenna gets below, you lose signal. So we're going to simulate that by turning off the transmitter. And if you just focus on the boat, turn it off. So the way I've got it set up, the throttle drops down to just barely forward, and the dive planes go to full rise. And the idea behind this is that if you lose signal, the boat will slow down and want to resurface. I didn't set it up, although it's super easy to set up, the gas ballast fail-safe in there. I didn't feel it was necessary because, again, the model is positively buoyant, and maintaining that gas system is probably just not necessary. But again, very, very easy to do. All in all, I am exceptionally happy and pleased with the way that this boat turned out. I was a little skeptical at first, I have to say, because the setup of the boat with dive planes close to the center didn't really tell me that it would have a lot of authority over the pitch, but as it turns out, it doesn't need it. Old Hunley had the design nailed down pretty good. So, but don't take my word for it. Let's stop now and we'll take a look at some video that I shot of this model in my pool. Now obviously I couldn't get it up to speed very much or run it for very long, but you'll get an idea about just how docile and easy to control this boat is. All right, there you go, everyone. The 1/12 scale HL Hunley RC model buildup from the 3D files, now available for purchase from the NautilusDryDocks.com. If you like this model, this particular one is going to go up for sale, but there's only one of it. So if it's something that interests you, you're going to need to let me know rather quickly. The link and information for that will be on my website. Again, NautilusDryDocks.com. So I'm going to leave you with that. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear from you anytime. Email me, bob@rc-sub.com. Love to hear from you. I'll leave you with that. Again, it's Bob Martin, the RC Sub Guy. Thanks for joining me.